Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to IQRA TV and to Medic Hour. I'm your host Rabina Mir, and in my hot seat today is Dr. Ghazala Mir, who's talking about research that she's done on how we can support Muslims with depression through therapies. We've spent the first half of the programme actually looking into that in more detail and why that research came about and how it might help you. And hopefully in this next part of the programme we're going to be talking about the actual booklet and basically how to use it and how others would use it for people who are depressed. I think the first thing I want to do is to make sure everybody knows you can download this. We're live on air if you want to ring in and ask any questions, so please feel free to do that. Whilst we're seeing if anybody does want to call in, Sister Ghazala, can you tell me, how can you tell that this is going to be useful for somebody that's actually suffering with depression?
So what we suggest that the therapist should do is to, before they offer the booklet, is have a conversation with the person with depression about what their important values are. And in this booklet and in the therapist manual, there is a chart that has different areas of where people can say that that's important to me. So, for example, it talks about parenting, family relationships, friendships, employment, and religion and spirituality are one of those areas.
Okay, so this isn't just aimed at people. This style of booklet could be used beyond being a Muslim, others that weren't Muslim as well?
Well, it's about trying to find out what the person's values are. So values go beyond just religion.
Yes.
It may be that somebody
see.
who's a Muslim also thinks their family is an important value or their work is an important value.
Okay.
So the therapist, what we're trying to say, and this is standard BA anyway, it's the standard behavioural activation approach, is to find out what is important to that person. So when you're encouraging them to get active, it's so that they get active in line with their values in ways that actually they value themselves. So spirituality and religion is one area. So that way of finding out about people's values doesn't put pressure on anybody to say religion is important. It's not a direct question to say, is religion important to you? Because it might be difficult for a Muslim to say no to that.
Absolutely.
But if you're asking them what are the most important values here, they could pick out the things that really were. And if they picked out religion, then we suggest to the therapist that they offer this booklet then to the client and say, would you like to have a look at this booklet?
Sounds like we've got a phone call coming through. Let's see. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, caller.
Wa alaikum assalam. MashaAllah, you do know well, sure.
Jazakallah.
May Allah give you MashaAllah. And well done, Sister Ghazala, for raising these issues, because
what's your name,
this
sister?
is needed in our society to believe. You need some spiritual belief as well as just medicine. And it does help a person get better.
Yeah,
and
that's what we found.
Slowly, I think our community doesn't understand lack of education. They got lack of education in their community, and they go by what they've seen by their mother and father and their ancestors. And what we need to do is educate our community, and this is a good way of learning them and teaching them the skills. Because only medicine doesn't work on its own. You need care and guidance, and like Sister Ghazala said, you need parenting skills as much is needed to understand mental health. A majority of mental health can get better if this is followed. And mashallah, I congratulate you, Sister Ghazala. Mashallah, you're doing well work.
It's really lovely for you to call in, sister. What's your name? You don't have to give your real name if you don't want to.
I'm not embarrassed to give my name, mashallah, because I understood I'm a long-term sufferer of epilepsy, and my name is Memuna Ahmed. And I realized that it's not just epilepsy I'm suffering, it's depression as well.
Sure.
And what it is that it's the way I was upraised, and I could see that it's not our parents' fault.
No.
It's because they had lack of education.
And also, we're at a time.
You need to understand that the importance of nurturing the baby is the roots of where it grows, the brain, the roots grow.
So, Sister
and if you don't nurture the baby properly, you get these mental illnesses later in the future life. So,
Sister Memuna, did you have a question for Sister Ghazala, or are you just ringing in to
no,
say?
No, I just like to say that the question is, well, I would like to join the therapy, and I would like to do the therapy myself, because I do think that this is needed, and so is parenting skills needed, because my aim as well is to raise awareness of educating our society in the understanding the importance of nurturing the baby.
Okay, well, hopefully you'll be able to download the booklet, and I'd suggest if you're in one of the local, if you're in Leeds or Bradford, there are services that you can access now to get help with this. Are you in Leeds or Bradford, or are you somewhere else?
Yes, I'm in Leeds. I've tried the NHS services, and all the neurologist departments keep on saying, oh, we tried our best and we can't seem to find the cure for your illness. But I've noticed it's not just epilepsy. I know how to control my epilepsy. It's depression and anxiety.
Okay, so where does she need to go to
I
access?
myself have researched for many years, and I've understood that if I didn't research myself into my lifestyle, my lifestyle history, I wouldn't understand my condition.
So in Leeds,
it's not solely epilepsy, but in our community they just think, oh, it's her epilepsy that's doing this.
Okay. So in Leeds, you can go to Touchstone Mental Health Services, have a self-referral form that you can use, and you know that's the way to get access to the treatment in Leeds.
Is that
thank you for your
Maimouna?
comments. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Jazakallah khair for phoning. Really lovely to hear from you. May Allah make it easy for you as well, inshallah, to access those services. Assalamu alaikum.
That's the really great part of this, is to hear people with depression actually saying they found it useful. It really makes you feel that, you know, you're on the right track with it.
It's been such a gap for such a long time, not just with depression, but with all sorts of things that, you know, whether we're practicing at whatever level we're practicing at, we do know that the solutions to lots of our problems already exist within our deen.
But I think what Maimouna raised there was a really important issue, is that our religion does contain these answers and people believe that. But what we often hear within our communities are mixed messages or sometimes quite biased messages. So one person that we interviewed for this study said, you know, when you go to the masjid, you always hear about the rights of the husband. You always hear about the rights of the parent. You never hear about the rights of the children. You never hear about the rights of the wives. And these are all there in Islam. You know, it's not imbalanced, but sometimes in our communities...
Some of our masjids are getting better at that.
Inshallah, yeah, they are, and especially if they include more women in the running of the masjid, you know. So I think, you know, we do need to look at this from the point of view of getting balance within our own communities. And what this approach is trying to do is help people find those answers from within their own value framework, from within Islam, rather than feeling that they have to abandon that framework and look for the answers somewhere else, which many people won't do. You know, what we found in the research was, in the existing research, was that people from Muslim backgrounds often think that a healthy way of life is an Islamic way of life. They think the two things are together. So trying to look for the answers outside Islam is not really where they feel they will find the answers.
Yeah, that's really useful to hear. Let's look at some of the content of this booklet, because I think it's really useful for, you know, like Sister Maimouna was saying, that she's just happy to hear that it exists really, and I think most people would be, alhamdulillah. So what is in the booklet that's going to be useful? You've talked about the values and how you assess whether it's suitable for people first.
Yeah. So as I said, what we tried to do in the booklet was find Islamic teachings that really mirror what the therapist is trying to do. So one of the things a therapist might try to do is, as I say, get people to be more active. So in here we talk about the 5 pillars of Islam.
And I'm going to have to stop you because we've got another call.
Oh, okay.
So
okay,
let's listen to our caller, and inshallah we'll come back to that. So on the 5 pillars. Assalamu alaikum, caller. Who's there?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
My name is Tariq Ali.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
And I was, when I was young, I was severely dyslexic, so I was expelled from a lot of schools.
Okay.
I could not learn how to read or write properly, but my English improved drastically living in England. But I miss reading the Holy Book. But I remember I was taught 7 or 8 surahs. As a severely dyslexic, maybe that's a sinful. I would never be able to read the Quran. But is it allowed for mentally disabled or people with the severe dyslexia to learn few things, or they have to adapt to learn everything? So if for a mentally disabled or people with severe dyslexia, is there an exception to learn Quran and Majid? Please explain. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's like a religious question. It's not really about the therapy, but I mean, and I'm not a scholar.
No, neither.
All I can really tell you is what I know from my own knowledge, which is that somebody who is not aware of their situation, so if their disability is so much that they're not aware, they're not accountable. On the other hand, if somebody wants to learn how to read the Quran, and it sounds like, you know, the brother is not so disabled that he can't actually learn how to read it, then they shouldn't be too worried about having difficulty in
Sorry, I think we're having some technical problems. We're not hearing either me or you. You just need to uncover your mic.
Okay, so if somebody's having...
Okay, just to make sure we can hear you.
Okay.
Hopefully.
If somebody has more difficulty than others in learning the Quran, that doesn't mean to say that they can't try. And the more difficulty you have, you know, there is a hadith that the more reward you get.
Absolutely.
So as I say, I'm not a scholar. I'm not really here to talk about, you know...
And also, we don't just learn, we don't have to read it through reading. We can through memorising, through hearing it, can't we? So there are other ways. I know I work with somebody that's got learning disabilities, and you know, he learns things through repeating after it being recited.
Yeah, so I certainly don't think people should be excluded from any teaching that goes on just because of something like dyslexia. And if somebody with depression raised that issue with the therapist, what we would suggest is to try to find somewhere that would support them to learn how to read the Quran if that was important to them and would help them feel better.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. I know that was putting you on the spot a little bit, but
fine.
it's good to be able to share things that offer that support. Absolutely. You were talking about the booklet.
Yeah, so I was talking about doing similar things in trying to get across Islamic teachings that were similar to what the therapist wanted to do.
Because this actually educates the therapist and is a tool for the person who's depressed who happens to be Muslim.
Exactly. So the therapist might be very interested to know what it is, you know, in Islam that would actually help somebody to get better. And I have to say that this booklet was inspired by some work that was done in Sheffield around psychosis.
Okay.
The Psychosis Recovery Service in Sheffield had a psychosis booklet, self-help booklet, and within that they'd put some Islamic teachings and they'd had a foreword by an imam. And when I saw that, the feedback from the health professionals was that they found it really empowering. And that really inspired me to think, well, maybe we could do something similar.
So is that why your idea came to adapt this?
That's where the idea for the self-help booklet came. It wasn't in our original idea of how to do the research. Originally, we thought we'd just do something for the therapist. But when I saw that, how people reacted to it in the psychosis service, I thought, if that's really empowering to those health professionals, it could be really empowering to therapists that we're working with.
I mean, I can't tell you how pleased I was that the action came out of your research. It's one of the criticisms I've often given researchers myself, as to, you know, all this research goes on, but what action comes out of it that benefits the actual communities that you research?
I really agree with you. I mean, I think it's so important for us to do research that has an impact on people's lives. And when I first got involved in research a long time ago, the research was really go and speak to people, write a report, and then see if it gets into practice or not. But really, there wasn't much link between the research.
And then they slide, don't they? They lose sort of momentum, and people don't pick them up again. And unless somebody does the research again, you know, 10 years down the line or whatever.
But it's about getting it into practice, isn't it? And I've had people say to me, oh, is it going to be a big report on a shelf? And, you know, people from within our own community are fed up of the research that doesn't go anywhere. So what I try to do is develop research that actually has a phase within it where we're actually trying out this new approach and getting people to practice it and seeing how that works. And then we can make recommendations about how to get it into mainstream services.
I mean, one of the chapters you've got in here is about one step at a time, and you talk about dhikr and dua and, you know, connecting to the Quran. And also you've got what I've really helped me, and I'm not even somebody that's looking for a therapy at this point or therapy support, but you've got in the booklet the full 99 names of Allah that I thought, even if you're not using it to support your depression, you can use this booklet actually to enhance the quality of your dua just because of the information that's provided in there.
That's right,
I know I found it really useful just reading it and thinking, I can use that for everyday stuff, never mind the other stuff that we're talking about here.
Yeah, so we do say that dhikr can be a way of making you feel more hopeful, making you feel safer, in a way of protecting yourself. And calling on Allah by His names is recommended in the Sunnah.
Absolutely.
And so and there are, as you say, there are 99 names. So using those names that are particularly related to your situation. You know, if you're, for example, depressed about the fact that you're unemployed, you know, Ar-Razzaq is one of the names of Allah. Absolutely. So calling on Him by the names that match your situation, or just reciting those names, helps you feel that, you know, you're being supported, that Allah is there for you.
And that connection grows stronger, doesn't it? Alhamdulillah. How critical have people been of this research within the field of therapies and the NHS, for example? I can't imagine everybody in the field that we're talking about would be supportive of it. Is that been your experience?
I would say the majority of people are supportive. People who are not Muslim and therapists in general, including some Muslim therapists, feel a bit uncomfortable because it's outside their comfort zone. But the more they've actually delivered this kind of treatment, the more comfortable they've become with it. So it's a new approach. They haven't been trained apart from the training that we've given. So it can feel quite uncomfortable for people. And the therapists in our study actually wanted us to write down the sentences that they would use to actually introduce the booklet to somebody.
To that level?
To that level, yeah. So that level of support they needed.
Because they were uncomfortable, or they were worried about...
So they were worried about preaching, about imposing religion. They were worried that people would see them as patronising them. So they wanted a form of words that would support them to feel more comfortable about doing that. And one of the other things that they were worried about is, how do we actually raise the issue of religion in terms of the therapist and the client relationship? So we suggested that they actually have actually raise the issue as a question. How do you feel about me supporting you, even though I am not a Muslim, or because I am a Muslim? To have that conversation with the client, because those things are in the room anyway. People are, both the therapist and the client are thinking about those things. Yeah. The client might be worried about being stereotyped, or they might be worried about being judged if it's a Muslim therapist.
Interpreting things out of context, because I think that's one of the biggest things that happens amongst us within the faith and those outside of a faith, in that you're always wondering, how much do I need to explain this? How much do they think they know about what I'm talking about? Because stereotypes get in the way, and the media messages get in the way, and they're not always the most helpful things for us.
No, and one of the things that we do in the training is actually to show images, different images, and get the people that we're training to write down the first thought that comes into their mind. Okay. And we do quite quick images, so that they don't have time to think it through, but they quickly write down the thought. And we always include a picture of somebody with an Asian-looking man with a rucksack. And always within the training, we've had the response, the word terrorist comes up, even though people don't want to think that. But we're surrounded by media images and just general sort of within the online communities, the idea that Islam and terrorism are linked, or Islam and is a dangerous religion, So these ideas are all there, and having those kind of discussions is really important. And it's very important in terms of the therapist and client relationship that the client feels safe in that relationship, and the therapist can give that message of inclusion and not exclusion.
I mean, this, I guess, links back to you saying that you're available to offer training to therapists out there who want to develop their skills, and we're kind of hoping that there are people that would learn from this and say, you know what, we need to recognise we're not being inclusive enough. We do need to take on board this training, just as we take on any other training around any other community issue or any other area of concern. And to me, I keep asking myself, what's the barrier to this? What's stopping them being proactive on this issue?
So I think the majority of people, once it's introduced to them, can see it. There are those comfort zone issues, and that can be a barrier in itself.
But part of professional development is to push yourself out of those comfort zones.
And then there are a small minority of people who actually think religion and healthcare should not mix. And this is actually a big debate in psychology and psychiatry anyway. So the idea that it should be separated out, there's some resistance from there too. So we need to address that and say this is not about preaching, it's not about imposing, it's about starting where the person is and using values that are important to them.
Absolutely. I'm very conscious that we've got only a few minutes left before the end of the show, and I wanted to ask one more question before I ask you to give your top tips for today.
Okay.
So the final question I wanted to ask, because I think it's part of what we hear about in the community, is this approach suitable for someone who thinks their depression is linked to jinn or black magic?
Yeah, so in the therapist manual, we do say about this that people will have different explanations for depression, and they might not even call it depression. They might say they've got all over body ache, or they might say that they're affected by magic, or that there's some issue of jinn. They might not even come into services. They might be going to a faith healer, for example, because of this. And the approach that we've taken in here is again the same BA approach, which is it doesn't really matter what you think the cause is. This approach can still help you. And if, for example, you feel that somebody is trying to harm you, then there are things within Islam that you can do to protect yourself. There are, within your own value framework, you can protect yourself.
Okay. And if I were to ask you for your final tips for the session today, there's so much more we could have talked about, but unfortunately we're coming to our final minute, and I just wanted to know, what top tips would you give to our community out there in how they can benefit from what we've been talking about today?
Well, my top tip would be, if you've got depression, or if somebody in your family has got depression, don't think that that's anything to do with a lack of iman. It's nothing to do with a lack of faith.
Yeah, it's so nice
Treat
to
it
hear
as
that,
an
yeah.
illness, and support that person. And the person who's got depression should feel that this is a test for them, and not feel that they're being punished, or that this is something lacking in them. It's something that they might need help with to help themselves get more active and get better. That's the main thing.
Yeah. I'm going to have to stop us there. Jazakallah khair, everybody, for watching. I hope you found it beneficial. Please remember us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.